Hey guys, today's episode with Chase Griffin from UCLA, he's their quarterback, their redshirt sophomore quarterback, is presented by Compassion International. We are so close to reaching our goal of 70,000 kids that we're trying to help release from poverty. 70,000 kids and their family affected by the pandemic. You can help right now by going to fillthestadium.com and donating. It's food, it's education, it's medical care, it's vocational training. It's the basic essentials that you and I take for granted here that your money is going to go to help a child and their family living in poverty, especially during this pandemic. Check out fillthestadium.com to learn more and to donate today. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. Go to fillthestadium.com.
This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where faith and sports intersect. Now let's bring in our host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Jason Romano. This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where we bring Jesus back into the sports conversation. And we're going to do that today with Chase Griffin, the UCLA redshirt sophomore quarterback. I'll tell you a little bit more about Chase in a second. First, want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com, the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. Devotionals, podcasts, articles, stories, testimonies, all available for free, updated every day at sportspectrum.com. And when you're at the website, do us a quick favor. Click the newsletter icon at the top of the website. And when you do that, you just put your email address in and you're good to go to sign up for our Sports Spectrum weekly newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch with all that we have going on at Sports Spectrum, all the articles and podcasts that you may have missed. You'll get an email once a week from us just updating you on everything happening at Sports Spectrum. So sign up today at sportspectrum.com, click that newsletter icon, and you are good to go. And when you do that, we have a gift for you. A 10-day daily devotional written by professional athletes themselves to help you in your walk with Christ. Check it out at sportspectrum.com. Sign up for our weekly newsletter, and that 10-day devotional is yours for free, emailed to your inbox, a digital download when you sign up at sportspectrum.com. Chase Griffin, man, I can't wait for you to hear this story. UCLA redshirt sophomore quarterback. He's going to be competing for time this year with UCLA. He played last year, his redshirt freshman year, and he saw action in a bunch of games, completed 65% of his passes on the season, had 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. But it's even more than on the field. And we certainly, when you talk to Chase, you recognize he wants to excel on the field. But it's away from the field that this guy has just impressed me. I shouldn't even say this guy, this young man. He's still 20 years old. He's just 20 years old, and he is wise, incredibly wise, beyond his years. He's already graduated with a bachelor's degree in public affairs in 2 years. 2 years, and he got a bachelor's degree. He was named an Arthur Ashe Jr. Sports Scholar in 2020. He earned a spot on the 2020-2021 Pac-12 Fall Academic Honor Roll. And this past year, in 2021 here, he earned the Chancellor's Service Award at UCLA, which is the highest leadership and service award for students at the University of California in Los Angeles. My goodness, this kid impressed me so much. And 20 years old, wise beyond his years, and I want you to listen closely to a lot of his answers because he has his priorities in order. This is Chase Griffin, the UCLA redshirt sophomore quarterback, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Hey, Chase Griffin, what's going on?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so good to have you here on the show. Let's start with this. You're entering your redshirt sophomore year, which is basically your third year at UCLA, but you've already graduated with a bachelor's degree in public affairs in 2 years, basically. Chase, you're making us all look bad, my brother. How you do it? How did you do it? Congratulations.
I mean, first off, it's just a blessing to be able to get that degree. Two things I was really focused on when choosing UCLA, and that was maximizing my time at school and maximizing my time in my sport. And, this honestly frees up some time to focus on football. I'll be attending the Transformative Coaching and Leadership Master's program this fall. I look forward to that. I know some of the professors in there are actually some of the associate ADs. So people that I've worked with, I look forward to learning about Wooden and his teachings.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm just savoring this graduation.
How are you able to do it though? I mean, were you doubling up on classes, taking summer classes that first year when you were redshirting, maybe doing a few more, like how do you, because I went to college and got my degree, but it took me 4+ years to get it.
Right.
So how did you do it?
It was really a combination of summer school for about 2-3 years. And then I came in with some classes off of AP tests. High school, and then I was taking a bigger course load than average.
Okay, that's good, man. Congratulations. I mean, is there a certain number of degrees you want to attain and earn? Do you think about that? I mean, two. The master's sounds pretty good, but do you want to keep going? It sounds like you're a everyday learner, a lifelong learner here when I'm talking to you.
I think there's definitely a couple more degrees that could be in my future.
Okay. All right. That's good. You've always been one that isn't just focused on athletics, but academics, I presume. Is that something that goes back to when you were young, when you were little?
Absolutely. Both my parents were always on me about school. That was really the first priority as far as between school or sports. It wasn't even a comparison. And I'm blessed to have a mother who's a teacher and not just a teacher by trade, but a teacher at heart. And she worked with myself, my sister, and then now my little brother on making sure that we were on school every day. And we created habits that would help lead us to be successful in the future. I'm not sure if y'all know this, but my sister is attending Stanford this fall on neuroscience track.
Wow.
So, yeah, she's if y'all think that I'm smart, she's way past that.
Well, I'm just watching you and I see you smiling and grinning from ear to ear. Sounds like you're pretty proud of your sister.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's go back a little bit. And I think it was 8th grade and I was still working at ESPN at the time. And I remember being there and seeing this article about this 13-year-old kid and thinking that's a pretty bold headline. QB most likely to succeed. That was you that article was written about. So what memories come back when you think about that time in 2014, being an 8th grader, basically 13 years old, and ESPN writing a story about you?
Right. I mean, first off, shout out to Max Olson.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That was, as a 13-year-old, that was a pretty amazing morning to wake up to. Not to mention, I was actually at the Elite 11 ball boying at that time. And through the Elite 11 is how I met the Stangstroms.
Okay.
So overall, when that was released, I was on cloud 9, not just because of the article. I was less focused on that, but more, there was another summer that I was able to ball boy at the Elite 11 and really spend time around the sport that I love and the position that I love.
Who were some of the quarterbacks that you were around when you were ball boying back then? I'm sure there are going to be some names that we probably know.
I mean, the list is endless. From the first year, I'm going to miss a bunch of names, but
okay.
From the first year, some of the notables were Jared Goff, Christian Hackenberg, who was huge at the time. Then there's so many that some of the counselors were Carson Wentz, Johnny Manziel, who I'd known previously.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the recent years. But
those are pretty good names, right. Guys that are in the league.
And not just the players, but also the coaches. So you had George Whitfield, who I've trained with for a long time, who's been a mentor and family friend.
Yeah.
Trent Dilfer, who's the head coach of the camp, who really has, been a huge blessing in my life. And also, I think in line with your show, has been very good at, giving his testimony on his faith.
Yeah, Trent's a good friend of mine as well. I worked with him for many years, and I love him. He's such a giver. He's so passionate, but he gives back. I have to imagine you've seen that too. Like his energy is great, and watching him how he coaches, and certainly his knowledge is amazing. But he's the definition to me of a servant leader. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely think he embodies that and embodies it consciously. I think each day that he was out there, as far as my experience with the Elite 11, it was always positive, regardless of, he was being hard on a quarterback or getting into the details of a drill and critiquing. It was always to progress the player. And you can't really ask for more out of a coach. And you could see he came from the player's perspective.
So you're 13 and ESPN writes an article on you. For a lot of people, that kind of pressure would send them spiraling out of control in many ways. And for you, you channeled that. You did amazing. You had a great high school career. You won the Gatorade Texas High School Player of the Year and had a career that has brought you to UCLA. So it worked in that sense. And you were able to kind of keep your head on a swivel and do it well. What was it that kept you from crumbling under pressures and expectations? Because when you throw that out there, when you have a story on you when you're in 8th grade on ESPN, everybody's going to start knowing about you. I have to imagine you received a lot of attention and a lot of people reaching out just because they read that article. But there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And you were able to, it sounds like you were able to channel that, because I'm looking at your numbers and the years that you played in high school down in Texas. And by the way, Texas, all right, Texas high school football. You were pretty darn good. So how were you able to do it?
I think it's a combination of two things. Number one was the expectations that were set by others for myself. I didn't really have too much regard for them. I always appreciated when people said good things, but never needed it to fuel my work or needed it to fuel my own self-validation. So I always set higher goals for myself than would probably seem realistic to a lot of people for me. But I know that through my faith, which keeps everything in perspective for me, these things that may seem out of bounds or out of reach are entirely possible. J. Cole has a really good line where he says, if you believe in God and you're not aimed too high, then you're aimed too low. So if you believe that Jesus died 2,000 years for us and rose 3 days later, then any of the little goals that we have should seem very attainable.
Right. That's a great way to put it. Now, that faith, you talked about it. Tell me about the importance of your faith in Christ and how it guides you and leads you today.
It's the number one thing that guides. I'm a firm believer that, the nature of man is wicked. Like I know that if we were all left to our own devices, we would end up in places that we don't want to go. But the best part about it is the deed is already done. All we have to do is have the faith, believe. And I think a lot of times people don't realize, people think of faith as, okay, it helps you when you're on your deathbed and you're going to heaven. But it also helps you on every single step along the way. The stronger your faith is to Christ and in heaven now, the better steps you'll take and more successful you'll be in your life.
Who are some of the people and some of the seeds that were planted in your life to guide you into this faith? I'm sure, having parents who were around had to have an impact on you, but at some point you have to make that faith your own too. But who are some of the people that planted those seeds into the life of Chase Griffin?
I think my parents, definitely. Both of them were raised in the church, my father heavily. And I went to church from an early age, but I can also say I was blessed and touched by God early. And from the earliest I can remember, I believed and had some sort of faith. On my own volition, I asked to be baptized when I was about 5 or 6. It was always something that came easy to me to believe and understand, even as a child, and to utilize in everyday practice. And I think my willingness to talk about it with others now, my willingness to, question, think about it, read scripture now is what has kept me successful in everything else. When you know that the most important thing is taken care of and you're working on it every single day, everything else seems less make or break and more make or make. So you look at everything as, how can I make this a positive? How can I get the most out of this opportunity? you don't feel like your life is always teetering or on a balance scale, because you have the security of Lord, and it doesn't get any better than that.
As a guy who probably is identified by some people as, you're a really smart guy, right? Like you kind of mentioned, and you got your degree in 2 years, your bachelor's degree. But you also mentioned, as a guy who questions it too. I wonder for you, as you got older, did you investigate the faith a little bit? Did you kind of look deeper into, it's one thing to believe, and I believe, and you believe, and that's what faith is, but to test the scriptures and to look into it and kind of investigate it. Did you ever allow yourself to do that, or have you allowed yourself to do that yet?
Definitely in discussions with people, you talk about faith, and I definitely respect all people of all faiths.
Of course.
At the end of the day, I believe God is God, and you don't have to belong to a certain sect, a certain church to talk to God. If you believe, then I respect your belief. At the same time, I'm secure enough in my own beliefs to where questioning it and having it be questioned by others and agreeing in the validity of certain arguments, it isn't a threat to my own faith and my own relationship to God. And I think by building that strong, you're able to not only, build your own faith, but help others build their own. And I think a lot of the time we misconstrue faith as something that goes through a middleman. Well, the middleman is Jesus, and he is Lord. So it gets as direct as it possibly gets. I always say, the church is great. The church is there to help you build your faith. But as far as the faith connection, that's between you and God and no one else. And the best part about that is no one else can take that away from you.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation here on Sports Spectrum to tell you a little bit more about Compassion International and our Fill the Stadium initiative. They have been great partners and sponsors with us here at Sports Spectrum. We love what Compassion stands for. We love what they are all about: releasing kids from poverty, helping children in crisis. We know about the pandemic. We know COVID has affected so many, and it's affected 70,000 children and their families that were in Compassion programs as well. And so Compassion and our pro athlete friends decided to join together and stand in the gap for those 70,000 kids, and thus Fill the Stadium was born. And our goal last year was to fill 70,000 seats, empty seats of kids in need. And here's an amazing update. So far, we've filled over 56,000 of those seats. We are almost there. We are about 3/4 of the way there, but it's not a sold-out stadium yet. We are trying to help 70,000 kids, so we get about 14,000 seats to go, and we need your help. Check out fillthestadium.com to donate and help release these children and their family from poverty. We're talking about essential food, medical care, and support for a kid and their family in need during this pandemic. You can go right now to fillthestadium.com and donate today. fillthestadium.com. We're so glad to have Chase Griffin here on Sports Spectrum today. He's with UCLA, their redshirt sophomore quarterback. When you arrived at UCLA, you were redshirted that first year in 2019. What did you learn that year not being on the field? I had to imagine that was tough because you were playing, had articles when you were 13 about you. You've been playing your whole life, and suddenly you're redshirted. What was that year like for you?
It was definitely an adjustment, not only because I wasn't playing, but because I was coming off of a wrist injury on my throwing. So I wasn't throwing the ball the way I had before, or how I knew like I should to play well in games. At the same time, I think it was very valuable, and that I'm a better player now because of it. I've always appreciated practice, always appreciated training, but in the past, I've always practiced, for the game, practice for this, and that. Sometimes when you're put in those positions, you learn that each practice is valuable on its own. And the same way that you have fun in games, you should strive to have that same fun in practice. So my practice energy is always up. I'm always positive. I'm always giddy, as if, I'm about to go into a game, because the same traits that you build in practice will show up in games. So I think I'm a better practicer now. I think that the respect of my teammates has been earned. I haven't played a lot of games, but when playing in games, I showed the same, upbeatness and positivity as I did in practice. And I think that rubbed off on my teammates and built respect and camaraderie between us.
What does discipleship look like? I'm curious for you at UCLA. So you get there and you have to go through that adjustment on the field, but there's also adjustments away from the field, adjustments in our spiritual journey, adjustments certainly academically, and you adjusted pretty well there. What was it like to be discipled and kind of stay connected to God once you got on campus at UCLA?
I mean, that's a really good question. It's definitely, there's an overload of freedom, an overload of a whole bunch of things that will seem fun if you're, fresh out of high school, especially. I come from, a mid-sized high school in rural Texas. And when you go from that to one of the biggest traffic hubs in LA, there's a lot to offer. I think the main thing that I developed in this time was focus and self-control. There's certain promises that I made to myself before I left that I still haven't broken. There's certain things that I'll just always avoid. There's no judgment to anyone who do partake in these things, but for myself, I know in my faith and just in my life, there's certain things I need to distance myself from. As far as discipleship, one of the best ways to be a disciple is to have people know that you believe in the word, and B, people see that you believe in the word. So anytime, a common greeting is "What's good?" Anytime someone asks "What's good, Chase?" all my teammates already know I'm going to say God is good. So
I like that. That's really good.
Keeping God top of mind is key for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's important as people listen. And we have a lot of young people that listen to this show, a lot of athletes. Keeping God at the forefront is very important. It's the most important thing. And yet you have this opportunity to play. And 2020 comes along last year. That was quite the year because the state that you were in was shut down. I mean, a lot of states were shut down, but California was definitely shut down. And that was quite the interesting year. You didn't even know if you were going to play any games, and then you get to play games, and then you get your opportunity to play. When you maybe 10, 20 years down the road, when you talk to maybe you have your kids, you're married, whatever, maybe you're president of the United States, who knows? But when somebody asks you about 2020, what do you think you'll tell them?
I'll just say it was an opportunity, and not to downplay any of the tragedies. There were so many people, who were afflicted, who passed away, had family members heavily affected by the pandemic. Yeah. But I know personally it provided time, and it provided time for a lot of people to look introspectively and to reflect on what we're about, what we want to focus on. At the same time, there was a lot of civil unrest and a lot of social norms being questioned. I think it was a time of social reckoning where, because we were all placed in a sedentary state, there was more evaluation of our daily action. I know for myself, I was able to go home for around 2 to 3 months, able to recharge with my family. I was also, once we came back here, we were able to focus on 2 things. I focused on summer school and football. And I think that focus that the environment generated gave me an ability to see clearer, really reflect more on who I am and who I want to be and my goals in life.
So 2020, you have that opportunity. You had an opportunity to get on the field and play last year. Saw your first game action, or I should say your first collegiate start against Oregon. Tough loss, but I just wonder for you, when you think back to that game, it's such a cool opportunity to have your first start and to be able to play. And obviously you never wish injury on anybody. You want to be a great teammate, but that's why you're there, to get ready and to be ready. in case the opportunity presents itself. And it presented itself for you. What was that like to get that first start and to, after redshirting, get that opportunity to not only put on the uniform, but to get in the game and show your team, but show the world what you could do?
Right. It's one thing to believe in yourself, which I always had. It's another thing when, you go up against a team with touted prospects and you play in a way that shows you belong. And that was the first time that I was able to exemplify that for myself and for others. I really believe that you can't really say someone can do it until you see them do it, as far as the football, and being able to show myself and show everyone else on the team, I think generated respect and validated a lot of my work. And so after that, it was really focusing on, in practice, how do we win this game? And really before, I think, like, going back to your earlier question, what I learned in those practices when I knew I wasn't going to go in 2 years ago were practice here and you practice well, like you're going to win the game, not just to play.
You don't ever want to be content on settling, I should say, but the Bible talks about contentment, and it also talks about being ready, staying prepared. There's probably a lot of God's word that you can apply to yourself in terms of how you go about being a football player. I'm just thinking about 1 Peter 3:15, and Peter says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that's within you. Do it with gentleness and do it with respect. And I'm thinking that pertains to quarterbacking in college too, doesn't it? In terms of staying ready, being prepared, and then being respectful over it, being competitive, but also being content to understand God's plan. I have to imagine there's a lot of carryover from your spiritual life into your football life.
Absolutely. If the camera zooms in on me on the sideline in between drives, I'm praying. And that's really been something I've done since sophomore year of high school. Whenever I get in situations where, either a test or something where, I start to feel pressure, the best thing for me is to turn back on my prayer. And that really does two things. Number one, I think that prayer actually physically puts you in a better, more tranquil state.
Yeah.
But it also mentally puts everything in perspective. It shows myself that, the big win is already there. Now, each day in life is another opportunity to, get little wins on the way. So in between drives, I'm saying a prayer, just be with me. Let everything happen under your will. And that gives me a sense of comfortability, a sense of faith. So when I'm out there, I'm not thinking about anything other than the play. And that focus, I think, has helped me be a consistent player.
That's what being a good leader is too. And you earned the Chancellor's Service Award for UCLA in 2021, the highest leadership and service award for students at UCLA. Tell me about being a leader and what it takes to be a great leader. All you have to say is quarterback, and the word leader is attached to it in many ways because of the position and what that entails. But now that you've been doing this for a while, a few years at UCLA, but certainly playing quarterback for a long time, but even as a follower of Christ, what makes a great leader, in your opinion?
I think a leader is someone who is able to put themselves into the eyes and feet of their followers. So I think one of the main things that Christ displayed in his leadership was compassion, and his sympathy for those who may not know as much as him, do not know as much as him, who will never amount to the same things that he amounted to, and treat them with more respect than they would treat him with. I think a lot of the time leadership is misconstrued as transactional. I do this for you, you'll do this. No, the leader leads out of love And love doesn't come from what I expect someone else to do for me. It comes from my own intrinsic, I want to put out this love. So when Jesus came to save us, he wasn't doing it hoping that we would pray, hoping that we would be better, hoping that, no, he came out of his love for us.
Yeah.
And I think in that same suit, as a leader, when you are doing things to better your community, to see things in your area that you want to see, to bring the best out of people, it has to come from an intrinsic feeling of wanting to do this. It can't be because you see something coming back to you at the end of the light.
We're so glad to have had Chase Griffin here on the show, UCLA's redshirt sophomore quarterback. You're still just 20 years old, soon to be 21. You got a whole lot of life left to live, hopefully. But when you think about your life and where you'd like to see it, what do you think you would like your legacy to be when you look back? I mean, you're still only 20. I think maybe that's a heavy question to ask a 20-year-old, but I'm guessing you think about your legacy a little bit, how you want to live your life and the ways that you would like to live it. What do you think that would be, that legacy that you would like to leave?
Right. I think it really comes down to two things. And there's a lot of things that go into them, but early on in life, I want to build generational wealth. It's something that I believe I owe to my future family. It's something that I believe is an opportunity that is placed before me, that by the hard work of so many people in my lineage. There's a long line of my ancestors that, have been in education, have committed their lives to excellence, have ran schools, have been principals, teachers. And I think that it's not a coincidence that some of the opportunities that I've been blessed with have come into my life. And I don't think it has anything to do with me. I think the work that the people who have come before me have placed throughout their entire lives has come to fruition. And I believe that I'm blessed to be in the opportunistic state to take advantage of this. Secondly, I think that with the gifts that I've been given and hopefully blessings that are still in store, I have a duty to give back in many forms of public service. And then finally, the most important thing is to do all of this while still maintaining true to my faith. So if I do that, I believe that I'm on the right track. I believe that I'm utilizing skills that God has given me throughout my time of learning and just growing up in my home. And if I'm contributing to his glory, then I can't be doing much better.
Fantastic answer, Chase Griffin. Thanks for being here, my friend. This is great to get to know you. I'm a Chase Griffin fan now, and not that I wasn't before from afar, but now that I get to know you and interview you and have a conversation with you, man, I'm rooting for you. Congratulations on all your success thus far. God's got great plans, clearly, and a lot more to do, hopefully, for you both on and off the field. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jason.
And that was Chase Griffin from UCLA, and I've said it in the beginning, and I say it again here. I was just so impressed talking to that young man, 20 years old. He's still 20. He's not even allowed to drink yet. And yet, my goodness, he's on the path to having an amazing life, I would think, as a kid who's graduated already with his bachelor's degree. He's going into a master's program. He's playing college football and a lot of goals. I thought his answer on the legacy that he wants to leave was incredible. And to be 20 years old and have that awareness of the legacy that he wants to leave is quite impressive. And I'm thankful to Chase. Glad he joined us here on the show. Glad he said yes to coming on. And hopefully we'll revisit Chase Griffin in a couple years or next year or wherever and see what the Lord has done in his life. But we appreciate him for coming here on the show today on Sports Spectrum. You can give him a follow on Twitter and let him know that you heard his story, his incredible story that's only just beginning right here on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you check out our website, sportsspectrum.com, for all of our content. And that includes devotionals, podcasts, and articles. You can sign up for our newsletter there as well at sportsspectrum.com. And then whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, do us a favor, click subscribe. That way you never miss an episode. We drop new episodes 3 to 4 times a week, and it's hard to just find them on social media, or, sometimes you forget to search for them. But when you subscribe, they just come right to your phone or whatever app you listen to podcasts on, and you subscribe. That way it comes right to your phone. So click subscribe and never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. And then lastly, just tell someone about Sports Spectrum. If you love Jesus and you love sports, this is the place to come, and let somebody know about this conversation with Chase Griffin, or about Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith. Our goal is to glorify God and bring Jesus back into the sports conversation. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jason Romano. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and join us next time here on Sports Spectrum.